busy. I mean, people have lives, so.
The great fish tank incident of 2025.
Mike, what's going on? How are you today?
That was the highlight of the basketball season, I think.
Could very well be. Could very well be. All right, let's start with how we always do, and that's your takeaways from the previous game. And, as we talked in the first half hour of the show, Saturday went so much like so many other games this season, right? They're in it. It's tied at 44, 12 minutes left. Other team goes on to run, and they can't recover. What are your takeaways from the UNC game?
Yeah, just again disappointed in some things like it felt like Donnie was very passive for most of the game and didn't really seem to be fighting to try to get his or make an imprint on the game, and they had some issues defensively. Offensively, they went through a few prolonged periods. Like you said, they get down and then they fight their way back, and then there always seems to be something that kind of is the catalyst to things. And it felt like when they tied it up at 44, North Carolina calls timeout and scores, and then it was a careless turnover. I think it was JJ who got tried to cross someone over and got the ball stolen, and North Carolina went the other way and scored an easy bucket. And it kind of felt like at that point, the entire momentum of the game changed. It went from Syracuse kind of feeling like that they've got a shot to, kind of feeling like here we go again. And it just kind of unraveled from there and was never really, a game after that. And, given who they were honoring and the fact that it was the biggest home game of the year, I still keep going back to some things that I saw early in the season that I'm not seeing now. The defensive intensity that we saw early in the season when they were one of the best by all metrics defensive teams in the country, all the way up through the Tennessee game, basically. Even Donnie Freeman being aggressive, but not just aggressive, but also early in the season, I keep going back to that Monmouth game. He's pulling guys into huddles and talking to guys and acting like a leader and all those types of things. And I haven't seen that much from him lately either. So it feels like some sort of dynamic within this team has changed. I just can't put my finger on it, but it just seems so much different from what we saw earlier in the year.
You mentioned Donnie, and not only has he struggled the last 3 games against top 20 opponents, Duke, Virginia, and North Carolina, but now it seems like his frustration is boiling over. A couple of technicals in this one. Wasn't that long ago we were talking about him as best player on the team and borderline NBA talent, and it seems like that talk track has certainly fallen off, and Nate Kings might be the best player on the team now, and Donnie's clearly struggling. What has happened with him? And I guess how do you evaluate his 2 seasons on the Hill? Injuries both years, and just never quite delivered on the kind of potential we thought he had.
Yeah, I understand why fans are frustrated for sure. I think year one, you kind of give them an incomplete, right? We know that team wasn't very good. The roster construction was pretty poor. And then obviously with the injury that caused him to miss as many games as it did. This year, a little bit different. I think we saw some really good flashes early in the season from him that we thought that, his game had taken a step forward and we're pretty encouraged. And then when ACC play started, it felt like he was sort of taking control of the team, right? That he was kind of putting everything on his back and saying, hey, I'm going to be the guy, and, played really well against Pittsburgh and Georgia Tech in the second half against Clemson and Florida State. And then it seems like from that Boston College game on, almost everything with this team has just sort of fallen off, and he's been kind of up and down and had more bad games than good games. And I don't exactly know how to evaluate him because I still think the talent is there. I still think he's an NBA talent from just a raw talent perspective. But, I think he probably, if he wants to be a first-round NBA draft pick, he needs another year in college to prove that he's taken some of those other steps.
What did you see of the offense? There's a lot of missed shots in this game. Were they good looks, bad looks, from your opinion?
There's 2 things, right? So I do think that they missed a lot of good shots. A lot of the 3-point shots are ones that you'd want, like Nate Kings missed a few. Tyler Betsy missed a couple. Donnie took a couple I thought that were good looks. Sometimes he just missed shots, and I think that happened to some extent. But at the same time, there were also large stretches where they had similar issues that they've had all season: lack of movement. Nate George kind of dribbling the ball up around the top of the key and not really doing anything with it, and that kind of makes everything else stagnant. There were a lot of issues offensively in this game, and I think motion is a big part of it. Missing open shots is certainly playing a role, but it just doesn't seem like the confidence as a group is there when they get into the half court. When they're able to get out and transition, that seems very natural and pretty easy still. But when they're in the half court, it's very up and down throughout an entire game, and there's a lot of isolation ball and lack of movement. But I still think they're at their best when JJ's at the one and trying to create. We just don't see that a ton.
Syracuse 3 for 17 from three-point range, and it's been an ongoing problem for this team, not just this year, but in recent years. All 3 years with Red as head coach, the three-point shooting numbers have been underwhelming. Do you look at it as, the bigger issue in that is roster construction? Is it scheme? Is it a combination of both? Or what do you point your finger to in that situation with, the three-point shooting numbers not being where you would want them to be?
It's usually not just one thing, right? It's just it's definitely this and only this. So there's probably issues all around, right? Offensive system could play a role. Roster construction could play a role. But, you look at some of the guys, like Tyler Betsy has shot the ball very well this year. Nate Kings has come on and shot the ball well. Donnie Freeman went through a stretch where he was shooting the ball really well from the outside, and that's fallen off. But JJ hasn't taken a jump there. And it doesn't seem like they get those guys on the floor at the same time all that much. Like, you don't have a ton of time where you've got Betsy, Freeman, and Kings all on the floor at the same time. So if you've got, three good outside shooters, three shooters that you think the defense has to respect, and you can't get them on the floor at the same time, that also is an issue. So perhaps even if you've got 3 or 4 shooters, if they're all forwards, that limits your ability to have, 3 or 4 guys on the floor at the same time that can stretch defense, which can then allow a guy like a JJ to have a little bit more spacing and attack. But I think it's probably a combination of a lot of things. And then, sometimes guys have a little bit of a down year as well. Sometimes it takes guys a while that weren't here previously to adjust to shooting in the dome. I think that might have been part of Nate King's issue early in the season. So it's probably a combination of all of those things.
All right, Mike, as we kind of look forward now, there's a lot of talk on our show and others about, a couple of specific candidates. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the various guys that seem to be gaining the most traction. Let me start with an SU guy, and I know some fans say they don't want anybody who's part of the family, but Mike Hopkins, right, it seems like is very much in the mix for this position. What do you think the fan reaction would be? I guess, what would your reaction be if Mike Hopkins were the guy?
There's going to be some. Whoever they hire is going to be criticized in some capacity, right? If Syracuse got Mark Few from Gonzaga, people would criticize it. If they talk Jay Wright out of retirement, it would be criticized by somebody. So someone's going to criticize it no matter what. That said, Mike Hopkins, I think, for those that want to go, quote unquote, outside the family, the benefit that you have from him is he's several years removed from being a coach here. He had those several years at Washington and then has been in the NBA ever since. So it's been a while since he's been here. That might help in terms of the reaction there. But I also think with his personality, it's such that his opening press conference, I think he's going to win a lot of those people back, because just the way that he is and how energetic he is, I think he'd be really good at getting the donors to contribute to the NIL. I think with the way that he would approach that opening press conference, he would get a lot of fans to start contributing to NIL or continue to contribute to NIL for those who already are. So I think just my initial reaction is I think he would be a really positive from that standpoint. As far as his coaching and X's and O's and all that, He had a couple of good years at Washington, had a few not so good years at Washington, so I don't know how that would work out. But just from an NIL perspective, I think he would do a lot of good things.
And I do bet that he would have the support of the former players by and large, which is something that I think is going to be taken into account. Now,
and nobody wins at Washington.
Well, I mean, there is some truth to that, but something that they're going to have to discuss. Now, if they go outside the family, probably the hottest name outside of Josh Schertz, I think a lot of people don't think Schertz is going to come here, would be Bryan Hodgson down in South Florida. What are your thoughts on him and potentially being a fit? You know, he's got the ties to the Western New York area and all that. What do you think about the potential of him coming here? Would he be a good fit?
He almost might be the best of both worlds because he's not, quote unquote, in the family, meaning part of the Boeheim coaching tree. But as you mentioned, grew up in Western New York, grew up a Syracuse fan. So he loves the area, knows the area, loves the program. And so he brings that same love for Syracuse University that a lot of fans have, right? And he'd be able to relate to them for that. And he has a reputation of being really good in terms of NIL fundraising, both at Arkansas State and at South Florida during his head coaching career. As an assistant, he was Nate Oates' top recruiter, both at Alabama. So he's done a really good job. He recruited really well at Arkansas State, had some of their highest ranked recruits that they've ever gotten. He's doing well at South Florida in early in his career there. So there's a lot to like. He checks a lot of boxes. I think the fact that he has basically only positive head coaching experience, has a reputation of as a good recruiter, and has the experience, increasing the NIL revenue stream. All of those are boxes that he would check, I think, for sure.
I've heard a lot of people say if he wins the conference tournament, I know that matters, but if he's the guy, right? Like if they get to the conference championship game and he loses, does that cost him the job per se? Or, I don't know. I guess to me, if they're sold on him, they're sold on him. It doesn't matter if he wins one extra game or not.
Yeah, I don't think that would change things. Think about this scenario, right? What if his team is up by 2 and the other team hits a full court shot at the buzzer to win?
Yeah.
Is he all of a sudden a worse coach now? The same thing I said about Jim Boeheim before he won his NCAA or his championship in 2003. Derek Coleman missing a couple of free throws doesn't suddenly make Jim Boeheim a worse coach. That stuff happens. So similarly, I don't think that would deter anyone. My guess is that they probably have a pretty good idea of the guys that they want that are kind of at the top of the list, and I don't think the results from this point on are going to change that too much.
All right, Mike. In terms of, let's look at the other stuff that happened this weekend with SU Sports, if we could. Men's lacrosse, women's basketball, both losing disappointing games. I guess we'll start with women's basketball. We talked about how, to get a top 4 seed in the conference tournament, to potentially get off that 8-9 line in the NCAA tournament, which is very important. They needed a win like this over NC State on the road to kind of move the needle, and fell behind early and just could not recover.
Yeah, it was one of those where the start kind of bit them because it was pretty evenly played from that point on. But it's a tough place to play. They haven't played well there historically, and it was NC State kind of felt like they needed that win as well, right? They may have been a little bit more desperate than what Syracuse was, and all of that plays into how this game went. So certainly put Syracuse a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of getting a top 4 seed so you can get some home games for the NCAA tournament. But I don't think that it's completely lost because if they go on a run in the ACC tournament, I think they still could work their way up there.
In lacrosse, we had Paul Carcaterra on the show Friday, and he warned us. He said, listen, it's outside, it's cold, it's going to be snowing. It's always sunny and 70 inside the dome. This is a tough spot for Syracuse against this Harvard team. And then sure enough, it was snowing, it was cold, it was outside, and Harvard knocked them off. What do you make of that upset?
All of that is true. However, they were up 4-1 after the first quarter. They gave up the lead. They were dominated in the second quarter. But then they rallied back in the fourth and had a 2-goal lead with, a little over 5 minutes to go. That's a game you should win, in my opinion. I know Harvard's good, and they'll probably move in. They'll be a top 10 team. moving forward. But in my opinion, you make a big statement against Maryland. Maryland then loses, so that doesn't look quite as shiny as it did at the time. But just a little bit disappointing because you feel like if you're taking that step as a championship caliber team, that's a game you should win. Now, that said, it's February. They're not going to be in environments like that the rest of the season, really. So you live and learn, and you move on, and hope that you can come out and win your next game, so that it doesn't become a thing where you're starting a little bit of a slide and start questioning things again.
All right, Mike. As always, we appreciate the time.
Who should be fired, Mike? After this weekend?
Everybody. I'd say
after this weekend.
Fire everybody, cut every player, start over from scratch at every program. Let's do that.
You've been listening to the show too much. Mike, good stuff as always. Thanks for coming on.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, Mike McAllister joining us on the show.
Steve. Oh,
Paulie.
I was going to do something, but John in the car has ruined my idea.